Non-disclosure agreements should never be used to silence potential victims of abuse. They are an attempt to protect an employer from embarrassment at the expense of justice. And as we saw from the Me Too movement, they can lead to chronic harassment going unaddressed. They are, in short, exactly the kind of thing the Labour Party should be opposed to. But it turns out they've tried to use them in exactly this way. The BBC report that Labour staff have been gagged over sexual harassment claims, and they say 2 former Labour staff were asked to sign confidentiality agreements after making complaints of sexual harassment about a senior official. Laura Murray and Georgie Robertson refused to sign the legal agreements and chose to resign without payouts, according to documents seen by BBC News. Their lawyer, Mark Stevens, said the contract violated the Equality Watchdog's guidance and Labour's own policy on non-disclosure agreements. Of the complaints of these 2 former employees, the article states the BBC has seen documents including an initial complaint, formal grievances and official correspondence. In them, Ms. Murray complained the man was acting overbearing and possessive and had been pressuring her to go for drinks with him. He was also constantly messaging at all hours of the night and had made inappropriate comments about her love life and her attractiveness, it added. Ms. Robinson alleged the official had also previously sought her out while she was working late and had pressured her to go for drinks with him following a private event. After rebuffing his advances, he then started to spread false rumours that I was sleeping with a married man at work. Georgie Robertson and Laura Murray explain how these complaints were initially dealt with poorly, with confidentiality being broken and the subject of their complaint being informed without their consent. Laura Murray, for her part, tried to resign in January 2020, but was encouraged to stay on. And then the situation got even worse for both once Starmer took office. That's because, on top of the harassment claim being poorly dealt with, the 2 staff members now found themselves accused of being the source of the Labour leaks, something which they deny. The BBC report, after months of uncertainty about their jobs, Ms. Murray and Ms. Robinson took out formal grievances and tried to negotiate their exit. The pair resigned after Labour Party lawyers asked them to sign a settlement agreement with a broad confidentiality clause, seen by BBC News. I refuse to accept that and to be silenced, Ms. Robertson said. It could encourage the party to use those agreements in future with other women who'd been harassed. The legal agreement would have stopped them from speaking about their experiences of harassment and from bringing any present or future claims against the party or the official. It would have also required them to compensate Labour for all costs related to the leaked report, their lawyers said.
The last sentence of that screenshot is just insane. What they would be, the party would be indemnified. I mean, we're talking potentially millions of pounds here. Who's going to sign an NDA? Put to one side for 1 second the claims of sexual harassment in the workplace dealt with very poorly and so on. Who's going to sign an NDA where they could potentially be down millions of pounds? And also, they've not been found guilty of anything. I believe there's a civil process ongoing in relation to the leaking of the report. I don't know if it involves these 2 women, but it seems a very, very strange offer from the party leadership. What it tells me, and this does go beyond just Keir Starmer and David Evans, but I think you also have to be fair to people like Jenny Formby and Jeremy Corbyn. It was getting better, including Ian McNichol. The Labour Party, for an organisation with a turnover of more than £50 million a year, wants to run the country, wants to effectively be the bureaucracy that runs a country of 65 million people, providing, economic, political, cultural, moral leadership. It's a terrible organisation, Michael. Novara Media, we have a couple of dozen people in articles, podcasts, videos. My God, we're a much better run organization. I don't want to go into the specifics of this, but that's what comes out with this story is just, it's a really concise expression of how utterly dysfunctional the Labour Party is. I think you'd really struggle actually to find many businesses which operate like this. When I say business, I don't mean, a corner shop down the road or the Dog and Duck pub. I mean an organization with hundreds of members of staff, with a turnover of more than £50 million a year, with recognised trade union branches. I think Labour Party staff actually have a choice of 2, the GMB or Unite. This is extraordinarily strange behaviour. Like I said, it's just dysfunctional. It's a rinky-dink organisation where you've got this bit bolted on there, and it's just completely absent of professionalism. And we see that time after time after time. The almost amusing aspect of it with David Evans and Keir Starmer, of course, is that they're having to be presented to the public by the media as these exemplars of professionalism and intelligence and competence. And what we see time and time again is anything but. And I suppose the question is, for people like David Evans in particular, because realistically, this is more his competence than Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer is ultimately the leader of the parliamentary party. What gives you the idea that you can run a country, that you can provide the senior civil servants, that you could administer the state, if you can't even administer the Labour Party? And so for me, this is an expression of a much broader problem. And it is intriguing, that time after time on issues of race, on gender, LGBT rights, Labour is found wanting. Now, I don't think that's because Labour's more aggressive than the Tory party. I don't think that. But it is instructive that when it comes to workplace practices, they don't put their money where their mouth is. We see that, for instance, with fire and rehire. We see that with them saying, oh, you can't have below inflation pay rises. Well, they've just given their workers 2% pay increases this year, probably 6% below inflation. And now we're seeing it with really abhorrent, unacceptable practices in regards to sexual harassment in the workplace. They talk the talk on this stuff, but they very rarely walk the walk.
I think it is worth also emphasising how bad NDAs are and how sort of just completely unforgivable it is for an organisation like the Labour Party to be encouraging people to take them. So how it works is sort of someone makes a complaint, you try and agree some sort of severance package, so the party will give you a severance payment, but then you sign away any rights to talk about this thing. Now, these are often used, and as I said in the intro, sort of in the Me Too movement, you'd get people who had been victims to sexual harassment or alleged victims of sexual harassment in a workplace. The employer doesn't want it spoken about publicly. So the staff member thinking, well, either I've got to go through a really traumatic court case or I can take this payout money, which gives me time to get a new job, and I can just put all of this behind me. So often people sign these for very, very understandable reasons. I can absolutely understand making that decision as well. But then the problem there is that when you have systemic problems, they never get found out because you've given an NDA to this woman who might think it's an isolated incident. Get rid of this woman with an NDA who then thinks that she was subject to an isolated incident. You've got all of these people with various NDAs. And what it means is that structural institutional problems or, serial abusers, as there were many in Hollywood, don't get found out because everyone's been gagged, everyone's been silenced. So I do think, with the Labour Party, we covered it a lot when Corbyn was leader. We cover it now when Keir Starmer is leader. A lot of what happens there seems to just be like incompetence, sort of factional warfare, creating just completely bizarre and dysfunctional outcomes. But there are some things where you shouldn't need to have a sort of streamlined management system to just say, this organization does not try and get women to sign NDAs in relation to sexual harassment claims. Like, there is no way where you can say, oh, sorry, we need to restructure the organization because it's not that efficient, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There is no excuse for doing that. It's very easy not to do that. And it seems the Labour Party in this situation have done that, or that at least they tried to. And, well done to these women for not taking those NDAs. As I say, I completely understand when people do. I mean, as Aaron said, in this case, it doesn't seem like it would have been financially useful because they also wanted them to sign off to say whatever money a court tells you have to pay because of the Labour leaks. Because as we talked about before, people were named in that. Lots of them are suing the Labour Party. They say you as individuals are going to have to pay all of that, which could clock up into the millions. So it seems like it was an incredibly strange offer from the Labour Party and pretty bad practice all around.